Thanks everyone for the opportunity to report on the work going on in the vaccine vocabulary work group. This work is the work I'm going to present today has been done by a number of people in the vocabulary. I'm leading it, but co-leading it with my colleague Dennis Kaduk, but I'm not a vaccine expert, but we have a lot of vaccine experts in the group. The objective of this group is fairly narrowly focused just on vaccine vocabulary, and our goal is to have a complete hierarchy and accurate mappings in the OMOP, the standard OMOP vaccine vocabulary. Our key results are to define use cases and problems with the current vaccine vocabulary, develop a solution and solicit feedback from the general OHDSI community, and then implement that solution into the OMOP vocabulary. We meet every other Wednesday, and our next meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And so if you're interested in this work, please come join our group. So some of the issues that we have identified with the current vaccine vocabulary are that standard vaccine concepts occur in multiple vocabularies: CVX, RxNorm, CPT, and HCPCS, and we also have classification concepts for vaccines in ATC. But the connections between these vocabularies is inconsistent, and they also kind of model vaccines differently. So it's hard to kind of put them all into one cohesive vocabulary. The mappings into different vocabularies is sometimes inconsistent, where some vaccines maybe are still mapped to procedure domain, and we really want all of that to be vaccines to be treated as drug exposure. And the current vocabulary doesn't always handle partial drug information, and in vaccines you oftentimes only have partial information about the drug that was given. Since CVX is the main vocabulary that we're using to represent vaccines in OMOP, we looked specifically at some issues with CVX. CVX kind of has differing levels of granularity, but no real hierarchy between them. So some CVX codes are very specific to a particular vaccine, and others are more general. And then sometimes implied information is used in the mappings, or is used to represent the code. This is information that's not in the concept name, but is somehow implied in that code. There's incomplete international representation. So this is a U.S.-centric code system. It does have some international codes, but it's not really meant to be an international code system. It's partially linked to RxNorm and not at all linked to ATC. And sometimes we have duplicate concepts in CVX and RxNorm, where we have concepts with the exact same name, and mapping is really, it's not clear which one to map to. So we explored 4 possible solutions to this problem. One is to try to integrate the existing vocabularies, maybe define some new relationships between concepts and kind of fix up what we have. Another was to create generic vaccine ingredients. So if you have a specific vaccine drug that you know, like an NDC code, you know what it is, you could map it to RxNorm, but if you have anything less than that, you would map it to a generic ingredient like influenza vaccine. The third thing we looked at was using attribute decomposition of vaccine source codes. So like what disease, what type of vaccine, the route and dose and form, and then use this process called formal concept analysis to kind of build a concept lattice and a new vocabulary from that. The fourth thing that we've looked at is just manually creating a new vaccine vocabulary. We looked at the pros and cons of each of these 4 solutions and have decided to move forward on the 4th one, possibly still supported by this formal concept analysis idea. So the new vocabulary is in draft form, and it has 4 levels to it. We have like a microbe disease level, a mechanism type level, a product formulation level, and then a branded drug level. And the branded drug level would still be RxNorm, but the other 3 would be part of the new vocabulary. We would have a top-level vaccine code, which all vaccines would be descendants of. At this microbe disease level, we'll have 27 disease concepts. So you can see that they're kind of split out. A lot of times vaccines are given in combination, and we're splitting these out kind of like this generic ingredient idea. But I'll show you how a combination vaccine would be modeled in this system. So let's look at a couple examples. For pneumococcal vaccines, we have this pneumococcal vaccine disease concept. And if all the information you have in your source data is that someone received a pneumococcal vaccine, you could map to this concept. If you know the type, you could map to a polysaccharide vaccine or a conjugate vaccine. And if you know the formulation, then you can map to the 7-valent, 10-valent, 13-valent, etc. vaccine. And if you know the branded drug, then you can map to the RX norm code for each of the branded drugs. For combinations of vaccines like tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis, we would have kind of a situation like this where we have multiple vaccines at the disease level, and we have sort of combination concepts that capture those combinations. So we would have separate tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis disease level concepts, and then a tetanus and diphtheria concept, and then a third concept for tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. At the type level, we would have acellular and whole cell diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccines. And that this would break down into DTaP, Tdap, DTP, and then further into the branded drugs. So the idea here would be you could use these concepts and their descendants to build vaccine concept sets easily and make sure that you're capturing all of the vaccines that you want to capture. There's plenty of remaining work to do. We need to complete this hierarchy for all vaccines, and in particular, seasonal influenza is a little tricky. So if someone has ideas for how to model seasonal influenza, since those vaccines are being created every year, please let me know. And we need to create the concept and concept relationship tables with the mappings to the new vocabulary. We need to think about stress testing this vocabulary before it's implemented. How are we going to test it out? How will we build drug eras? So we want vaccines to end up in the drug era table, and also to get standard covariates out of feature extraction for vaccine exposures. We want to circulate our proposal document to the OHDSI community and get feedback from the whole community. And then we want to actually implement this and get it into a new vocabulary release. So as I mentioned, we're meeting tomorrow. If you're interested, 9 a.m. Eastern time, please come join us. We're also looking at new times to meet. So if there's a better time, we're still looking at adjusting the time. But thanks for your time.